Henry VIII of England, 1491 to 1547, is one of the most famous and controversial monarchs in history. Famous for having had 6 wives, he was much more than a king surrounded by amorous intrigues. During his reign, 1509 to 1547, Henry radically transformed the religious, political, and social structure of England, breaking with the Catholic Church and establishing the Anglican Church, with a monarch as the supreme authority. His legacy is profound. Under his rule, England ceased to be a kingdom subordinate to the Pope and took the first steps toward consolidating the modern state. Henry was born on June 28, 1491, at Greenwich Palace. He was the second son of Henry VII, the first monarch of the Tudor dynasty, who acceded to the throne after the Wars of the Roses. His older brother, Arthur, was heir to the throne and was married to Princess Catherine of Aragon, daughter of the Catholic monarchs of Spain. However, Arthur died prematurely in 1502, and Henry became the new Prince of Wales. 7 years later, in 1509, he ascended the throne following his father's death and married his brother's widow, Catherine. Henry VIII began his reign as a young, attractive, cultured, and art-loving monarch. He was a true Renaissance prince. He spoke several languages, composed music, wrote poetry, and was an accomplished horseman. In his early years, he sought to gain the respect of his subjects and the other European courts through a policy of alliances and an image of a chivalrous king. During this period, Henry was a staunch defender of Catholicism. He even wrote a treatise against the ideas of Martin Luther, which earned him the title Defender of the Faith from Pope Leo X in 1521. However, within a few years, his personal and political conflicts would lead him to lead one of the most momentous religious schisms in European history. One of the major turning points in his life occurred when Catherine of Aragon did not bear him a male heir. Only one of his children, Mary, survived infancy, raising great concerns about the succession. Henry, convinced that his marriage was invalid because it had been to his deceased brother's wife, petitioned Pope Clement VII for an annulment of the marriage in order to marry one of her ladies-in-waiting. And Boleyn, the Pope, pressured by Emperor Charles V, Catherine's nephew, refused to grant the annulment. Faced with this refusal, Henry decided to break with Rome. In 1533, he disobeyed the Pope, secretly married in Boleyn, and declared his marriage to Catherine null and void. That same year, and was crowned queen and gave birth to Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth I. The papal response was to excommunicate Henry. He reacted with a radical measure. In 1534, he promoted the passage of the Act of Supremacy, by which he declared himself supreme head of the Church in England, officially breaking with the papacy and founding the Anglican Church. This act not only represented a religious rupture, but also a political and economic one. Henry dissolved the monasteries, confiscated their lands and wealth, and redistributed these assets among the nobility, thus consolidating his power. Although he did not change many doctrinal aspects of Catholicism, the control of the Church by the state changed the balance of power in the kingdom. The English Reformation was both a religious process and a power play. Although Henry was not a reformer like Luther or Calvin, his decisions paved the way for future religious changes in England. His successor, Edward VI, would further the Protestantization of the country, while his daughter Mary would attempt to restore Catholicism. Ultimately, it was Elizabeth I who consolidated Anglicanism. Henry VIII's personal life was as turbulent as his political life. He married 6 times, and his obsession with having a male heir influenced many of his decisions. He had 6 wives. First, Catherine of Aragon, mother of Mary I, marriage annulled. Second, Anne Boleyn, mother of Elizabeth I. She was executed for alleged adultery and treason. Third, Jane Seymour, gave birth to his only son, Edward VI, but died after childbirth. Fourth, Anne of Cleves, marriage annulled due to lack of physical attraction. Fifth, Catherine Howard, executed for adultery. Sixth, Catherine Parr, survived the king. This history reflects both Henry's volatile and authoritarian nature and the dynastic pressures of time. Henry VIII's final years were marked by health problems, obesity, ulcers, possibly diabetes, isolation, and paranoia. He died on January 28, 1547, at the age of 55. He was buried next to Jane Seymour in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Henry VIII's legacy is enormous. His break with Rome forever changed the destiny of England, making it a religiously independent and politically more centralized nation. It laid the foundations for absolutism and an English nationalism that would grow in the following centuries. Furthermore, his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, would continue to make history with their own decisive reigns. Beyond his marriages, his figure is a symbol of transformation, from a young humanist to an authoritarian king, from a defender of the faith to the founder of a new church. Henry VIII not only changed his country's religion, he changed its history forever. If you want to know other interesting stories, you can follow my YouTube channel, Frank Fernandez Historia.